Greetings, one and all. I've been discussing with people and friends and having emails about are other beings living on other planets. And I think a lot of people are discussing this recently because there's all this talk about perhaps a coming UFO op, or that there's suddenly going to be, information revealed by the governments that there are beings on other planets. So I'm beginning to wonder if they're actually going to announce that there's beings inside the Earth, Hollow Earth stories. And I did a show for the channel Anomaly 101 about that. Admiral Byrd going down to the South Pole and meeting beings from inner Earth who were telling us that we were destroying the planet and not to go into the nuclear way of technology. But there could also be beings inside other planets. I often wonder if, I know they look at pictures of Mars and say there's no life on it, but there could be life inside Mars. Is there life on Mars? And I also believe that all planets have a spirit being about them, like Mother Earth. She's our spirit being for this planet. Some people call her Gaia. And so we should be working with the Mother Earth spirit. We should also try and work with the other planetary spirits of this universe. And maybe there are other beings on other planets. I chop and change depending on the day. Sometimes I don't believe that there's other beings out there and it's all an illusion, demonic illusion. And then other times I'm like, yes, there are other beings from other planets to come and visit people, and UFOs flitting about and watching us. So obviously I'm quite concerned about the grey aliens and their agenda. I remember when Whitley Strieber's book first came out, I was only about 18 or 19, and I saw the book in the bookshop, the cover with the grey alien on, and I knew instantly that I knew that creature, even though I'd never thought of alien abduction before. I'd never thought about aliens coming and taking people out at night, to do their experiments on or whatever it is they do. But I recognised that creature on his cover of his book, and I bought the book. And I remember the cover used to give me the willies a bit. So I remember the first time I just turned it over thinking, right, I just had the front cover down. And it's got the picture of the cover on the back as well. So there's like grey aliens everywhere. But the reason I'm doing this show again is because I've been discussing this with various people lately, and I'm getting emails about what do I think about beings on other planets. And then I thought, well, I'm going to look at a bit of Gurdjieff stuff about this. And I'm going to read from All and Everything a little bit about what he says of the beings on the moon. The moon. We all love the moon. The moon. Seen in so many cultures to be seen as part of a female deity or has the goddess in it. And there's the other stories of the man who lives in the moon. And then there's very old mythologies. I think it's in the Chinese, definitely in the old American Indian mythologies of a time when there was no moon, and they remember when the moon came. But Gurdjieff, in the chapter Cause of Delay in Falling of Karnak, he's talking about the moon. And he says, so he's Beelzebub is talking to his grandson, Hussein. There is still another planet, a quite small one, bearing the name Moon in that solar system, my dear boy. During its motion, this peculiar little planet often approached very near to our planet Mars. And at that time, he was living on the planet Mars when he was in exile. And sometimes during whole Kypronos, which is to him is one of his time. I don't think it was it might have been a year. I forgot to look that up beforehand. Anyway, it's a time period. And sometimes during whole Kypronos, I took great pleasure in observing through my Tescuano, the telescope, in my observatory, the process of existence on the free brain beings upon it. So he had originally been watching planet Earth, spying on planet Earth, and now he's talking about looking at Mars and watching Mars. No, the moon. He's living on Mars. Sorry. He's looking at the moon. So the beings of this planet have very frail planetary bodies. They have, on the other hand, a very strong spirit, owing to which they all possess an extraordinary perseverance and capacity for work. It's kind of the opposite of us. On this planet Earth, we've got very dense and heavy bodies and very little spirit. So it's this developing of a lighter body. Here, obviously, he's talking from a physicality point of view, saying they've got frail bodies. But also, if we can make ourselves less dense, then we will be able to work on ourselves better and have a better connection with the spiritual world, the hierarchies, and the divine source. It's this density on this planet Earth that keeps us down here and away, disconnected from our divine connection. And I often wonder about this planet Earth. I know I've discussed before with people, and I can't remember if I've done shows on it or not. Are we on a prison planet? Are we kept here on purpose? And that's why we've got this gravity and this density that holds us down onto this Earth and kind of separates us from our connection to the divine source, because we're so dense and thick, but dense in heaviness, I mean, here. And that then that would maybe be that our mission is to reconnect to our spiritual side, find our esoteric path that will take us back up to our connection to a divine source, our connection to the higher forces. Whether it's for a prison or whether we're doing it as a challenge, maybe it's the fast track way of developing oneself is being sent to this earth. I don't know. These are just ideas, possibilities that I'm putting out there. But there is definitely something different about living on this earth compared to other planets, it seems. But we should go on about the moon here. So he's talking about the moon beings. In exterior form, they resemble what are called large ants. Like these, they are always bustling about, working both on and within their planet. The results of their ceaseless activity are now already plainly visible. I once happened to notice that during 2 of our years, they tunneled, so to say, the whole of their planet. They were compelled to undertake this task on account of the abnormal local climatic conditions, which are due to the fact that this planet arose unexpectedly, and the regulation of its climatic harmony was therefore not prearranged by the higher powers. So, the moon seemed to have appeared from nowhere, or was doing something that it shouldn't have been doing, wasn't part of the planned organization of the universe. Quite peculiar, hey? And doesn't it have an influence on us? And if it's being abnormal and a bit naughty, then it is going to have an effect on us. In the myths, they talk about how the moon affects our dreams, affects our subconscious, possibly plays with our consciousness, and possibly with our conscience. You know, we have all these stories about full moon, werewolves, crime goes up, rates are sky high because for some reason the full moon has an effect on people that makes them all a bit do naughty things, let's say, or criminal things, or lose their tempers, or become, you know, so lunatic, so out of their mind. Another word for the moon is, of course, lunar. And we get the word lunatic from it because, you know, I was told the adage was that it was because people used to go dancing in the front of the full moon. And since the full moon in the old days was known as the lunar as a lunar planetary body. So they were known as lunatics dancing away in the brightness of the full moon. And as we now know, it's not the full moon giving off the light, it's the sun's reflection upon it. So we have 3 days of no moon, where there's no sun reflection on it, and then gradually it comes back across the 28-day period of going bit by bit, so that the sunlight soon covers the whole of the moon and reflects down upon us. And we're trying to become solar beings, but the moon still has to have its effect on us as well. And maybe its job to help us stay being solar beings is to reflect the sun by night down upon us. And I find it quite interesting these days, whenever there's a full moon, there seems to be a lot of chemtrails about, trying to block it out. And we definitely couldn't see the full moon much this year. Doesn't seems to always be a cloudy night when it's full moon, or you just catch a glimpse of it. Anyway, carrying on with Gurdjieff. So he's talking about the moon. So he was saying that it was that this planet rose unexpectedly, and the regulation of its climatic harmony was therefore not prearranged by the higher powers. So who created it? Who brought the moon forth? Is it the dark forces? Is it the lower powers? Are they trying to capture us in some kind of moon entrapment, some kind of moon lunacy program over us? And if we were coming from the Rudolf Steiner point of view, I don't think the moon is the eighth sphere. I think the moon, because it's really not specified, but Rudolf Steiner talks about the eighth sphere is something that Lucifer and Ahriman is creating, another realm, another world that I'm sure Steiner is saying is between or goes around the earth and the moon, and we all become trapped in it if we don't develop ourselves. So maybe they needed the moon to help create this eighth sphere. Maybe it was a starting point for the dark forces to develop this eighth sphere to trap souls in. And I think the point of the eighth sphere is for the dark forces is they're trying to stop us as humans returning back to the divine source, our souls going back to the divine source. And if you read the book of Job, the whole story in that of the Bible is that it's like a battle between Satan and God as to whose soul we go to. And maybe we are the pawns in this game, and it is all just a game to them. I personally want to be on the divine sources side. I don't want to end up in the eighth sphere. I know many people talk to me about, oh, I hope I go to hell when I die, because that's when all the good music will be and all the rock and rollers, and maybe, but we don't know. It could just be internal punishment of a really awful time and not the rock and roll kind of hell you think it's going to be. But even from that point of view of which side do I want to be on, I want to be with the divine source. I want to be wearing my white hat, you know, if we're going to divide it into white hat and black hats, cowboys, and do divine source work. I want to be a part of the light force that is the divine source. And if it is a battle between the two, that's the side I'm picking. Anyway, going on about the moon. The climate of this planet is mad. So he's talking about the moon here. And in its variability, it could give points to the most highly strung, hysterical women existing on another of the planets of that same solar system, of which I shall also tell you. So I know that there is this idea that women are all hysterical. There are reasons why we get hysterical sometimes, and sometimes for good cause, for good reasons. And sometimes women make other women hysterical. Sometimes men make other women hysterical. I've seen children make women hysterical, but then that's maybe not being considerate. But doing this Gurdjieff work for us women, this is to help us not be hysterical, to be awake and aware. I've also known some men get hysterical. I've seen some men do some right girly, hysterical, hissy fits. Anyway, Gurdjieff writes, sometimes there are such frosts on this moon that everything is frozen through and through, and it becomes impossible for beings to breathe in the open atmosphere. And then suddenly it becomes so hot there that an egg could be cooked in its atmosphere in a jiffy. Now, I'm not a scientist. I've always was told that, or an astronaut, I would love to have been, that the moon is continuously cold, apparently. But if the sunlight is reaching it, it must warm it up in some kind of way. If the solar rays are pouring throughout the universe and can heat our planet up, you know, we have some hot summers, we've had some heat waves in the last few years, that moon is not too far away to not also be warmed up. Right, hold on. For only 2 short periods on that peculiar little planet, namely before and after its complete revolution about its neighbour, which is planet Earth, another planet nearby, the weather is so glorious that for several rotations, the whole planet is in blossom and yields the various products for their various being food, greatly in excess of their general need during their existence in that peculiar intraplanetary kingdom, which they have arranged and where they are protected from all the vagaries of this mad climate in harmoniously changing the state of the atmosphere. So he's talking about the moon beings here that he was discussing earlier, the ones that have frail planetary bodies but have a very strong spirit. Nearest to that small planet is another, a larger planet, which also occasionally approaches quite close to the planet Mars and is called Earth. The said moon is just a part of this Earth, and the latter must now constantly maintain the moon's existence. And for many of you that study the Gurdjieff work, we know that he's going to start talking about the feeding of the moon now, which brings up many different ideas with different people. If we're feeding this moon to help it develop, and the Earth is developing, and also we are feeding it, we need to give it the right food so that it both develop correctly. Their evolution is in the correct state. The moon is to become some kind of planet like the Earth. The Earth will at some point become like the sun and become a sun. And to do that, they both feed off us humans. We are the top quality food most of the, well, used to be, where now sadly I think many people, well, the majority of the world is giving it pretty bad quality food. But let's read on as to what this is. The said moon is just a part of this Earth, and the latter must now constantly maintain the moon's existence. On the just mentioned planet Earth, also free brain beings are formed, and they also contain all the data for coating higher being bodies in themselves. So that's us. We have the data to develop ourselves to become the higher being bodies rather than the lower free brain centered beings that we are when we're not doing the Gurdjieff work or development of any kind. But in strength of spirit, they do not begin to compare with the beings breeding on the little planet aforementioned. The external coatings of the free brain beings of that planet Earth closely resemble our own. Only first of all, their skin is a little slimier than ours. And if you remember, Hussein calls us slugs. And then secondly, they have no tail and their heads are without horns. What is worse about them is their feet. Namely, they have no hoofs. It is true that for protection against external influences, they have invented what they call boots, but this invention does not help them very much. Apart from the imperfection of their exterior form, their reason also is quite uniquely strange. And we're still strange now, and we've been strange for millennia, but I think we've been going downhill, and Gurdjieff says this, we're de-evolving instead of evolving. You know, the dark forces have somehow managed to take over, program us, and divert us from our mission. He's talking about us now. There being reason, owing to very many causes about which also I may tell you sometime, has gradually degenerated, and at the present time is very, very strange and exceedingly peculiar. And he goes on to say, Beelzebub would have said more, but they're interrupted because something's happening to the spaceship. So Gurdjieff's talking about beings on other planets, but they're in a different form to us and at a different stage of evolution to us. And from what I can gather of what Beelzebub's saying and Gurdjieff's writing about is that us humans were quite a low form of the development of a being. We're too dense, but we have a mission here to lighten ourselves, whether it's physically, but more lighten our spirit, lighten our soul so that we can move on. And also this work on ourselves, of the lightening of our soul, the lightening of our spirit, so that we become the properly aware, truly conscious of what we are and have the right conscience of how to go about our lives. We are then putting them thought forms, then ways of being back into the earth and up to the moon to help them both develop, and then they will develop correctly. But if you are living in a way that's, you know, not a development, not being, let's say, the sheep of the world, if you're being a sheep of the world, having no consideration for the evolution of the whole universe or being part of the divine source's plans, you're not sending the right vibrations into the planet Earth or to the moon. Now, those kind of people aren't watching these shows. My shows are to encourage people like yourselves that are watching it, that want to do this kind of thing. And remember, you're not alone, and that it is hard work, but it is worthwhile, because you're not just helping yourself, you're helping this beautiful planet that we live on, and you're helping the wonderful moon that will at some point evolve into a planet that will inhabit other beings. So I do believe in other beings and other planets. After all, Gurdjieff is telling us that. And it'd be nice if there's any beings from other planets watching any of these shows. Do get in touch and let me know what it's like on your planet. So from my world to your world, thank you for watching. Until next time, bye.